And here we go. Hi, everyone. Don't adjust your set. It is me, Alan Poupar, publisher of Miami Dolphins on SI. For those watching this on the podcast on YouTube and not the audio version, there is no Montreal Expos hat. And yes, I do have hair. This is what I wanted to prove today by doing a Expo hatless podcast episode with my good buddy Dave Hyde from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Dave,
it took episode 465 for you to go hatless. So in another year and a half, we'll see you go hatless, right?
You know what? I think, if memory serves, and it would touch my heart so much if one of the listeners would be able to tell me. For some reason, I seem to recall having done another episode without the Expo site. It's right here next to me, though. But today, for some reason, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. We're not here to talk about the hat. We are here to talk on this Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, Dolphins, state of the Dolphins, free agency, salary cap. I want to talk about a meme that showed up on social media today asking for the best player for each team in their history. And the Dolphins' choice was Dan Marino, of course. But the question is whether it's a slam dunk of that magnitude and who else could be or should be in the conversation. But we'll start with some news right off the bat. And Dave, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, and we'll get to those. Dolphins are losing an assistant coach. It's not one of the three who interviewed for a coordinator position, and it's not Anthony Weaver who interviewed for a head coaching position. It's offensive assistant Parks Frazier, who will be joining the Philadelphia Eagles as their pass game coordinator. And we've heard that title quite a bit in the last couple of days with the Dolphins since their new hire, Bobby Slowick, is senior pass game coordinator. Anyway, so he's going to the Philadelphia Eagles. He worked with Nick Sirianni, their head coach with the Colts, rejoining him as pass game coordinator, filling the role previously occupied by Kevin Patullo, who is replacing Kellen Moore as OC because Kellen Moore is now head coach of the New Orleans Saints, getting the job ahead of other candidates, including Anthony Weaver. So we just wrapped it all together in a nice little bow here.
Maybe that's why Bobby Slowick is. Bobby Slowick? Am I getting the Ryan Slowick is here?
Both of them.
All the Slowick brothers, the whole Slowick family is going to be here by the end of the offseason, I think. But
there you go. The other news on this Wednesday was this news from ESPN's Dan Graziano that the NFL salary cap for 2025 is going to be somewhere between $277.5 million and $281.5 million, which is a little bit higher than the two websites devoted to salary cap analysis, Over the Cap and Spotrac, or Spotrac, I don't know how you pronounce it. So my apologies. Had projected. And the higher the salary cap, the better it is for any team that has salary cap issues. And that's certainly good news for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, every penny counts with them when not only are they still over the cap, but they got so many needs just to feel the lineup. I mean, starters, quality, and to me, number one in free agency will be cornerback. They are desperate not only for a impact position, but they're going to have to spend some money to get somebody. And so, sure, if they get an extra $4 or $5 million, it helps every team, but it certainly helps a team like the Dolphins a little more.
Yeah. I just posted a story on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, and I'm going to tell you the premise after I lay out some facts. And then again, this is your chance to call me crazy, stupid, ignorant, all that, whatever word you want to, you have carte blanche. The Dolphins currently are, with the new projection of the salary cap, they are technically under the cap now by 1.5 mil. But if you add on later on, if you project for the rookie class with effective cap space, they're like $5 million over. They only have 46 players under contract, including all those players they signed to future contracts right after the end of the season. They have 25 impending free agents. So that means they're going to have to pick up a lot of additional players. Only the top 51 cap numbers count against a cap that each team needs to be at on March 12th. And the premise of what I wrote about is, you mentioned cornerback. Guard is another significant need for the Dolphins. There's a report from The Athletic that the Chiefs are not going to franchise tag or transition tag Trey Smith, who is clearly the top guy, who will be on the market. And the premise of my column is we can probably forget about the idea of a Trey Smith or of a high-end, meaning expensive cornerback like Ward from the 49ers, like Byron Murphy from Minnesota, because the Dolphins simply do not have the cap space, financial wherewithal related to the cap to be signing guys to a Teron Armstead, Byron Jones type of free agent deal like they did before. Agree, disagree? I'm crazy. I'm nuts.
Agreed. That the top end, the top shelf guys are probably not going to sign. But was it Pro Football Focus? What? There's so many free agent lists out there. I can't think of which one it was, but 8 of the top 50 players were cornerbacks. And so, like every year, there will be, if you do your work and you get a guy to fit your system, you don't need the top end guy. You need a system fit and a guy who's going to play, give you average. Hopefully, average is the basement play this year. They need 2 guards, they need 2 safeties. But as far as premium position, impact position, gotta have you need at least an average guy. We're talking cornerback to me because that's they got Jalen Ramsey who turns 31, and they got Cater Ho who will be a restricted free agent, but he's a nice guy. You got, and other than that, they got really a bunch of. I mean, do you trust Cam Smith in year 3 when you haven't seen anything from him the first 2 years? Storm Duck. I get Storm Duck. Nice story, undrafted. There are guys they have there, but they need at least one cornerback just to line up, I think.
No, I don't disagree with that point either. And this is where I've done lists before, and I'm going to do it again at some point on the website, where there's always 4 or 5 stories, free content. So please check it out, gang. Like if you look at the best free agent signings the Dolphins have made in their history, it hasn't been necessarily the really high, big name.
Yeah.
And they're the 2 different categories. And I look at Brent Grimes, who was an up-and-comer who had torn his Achilles in the first game the previous year when he was with the Atlanta Falcons, where his market value obviously had dipped massively, and the Dolphins were able to get him for a decent price, and he was a complete stud. And then Randy Starks, who was an on-the-rise guy with the Tennessee Titans, not like a huge name, not a Pro Bowl guy, but he came with Miami and he gave the Dolphins 4 or 5 really, really good seasons. And when they've gone for like the big ticket item, whether it be an Ndamukong Suh or a Teron Armstead, not that those guys have been bad, but they have not necessarily been able to justify the price tag.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a time for the Dolphins to play fantasy football. You or I could have signed. You said you want Tyreek Hill, sure. Here, hand over a whole draft for him and 120 million. Yeah, we could. Anybody. This is one where your front office has to earn their money and make good decisions, not only on the field but value decisions. On this is for a good price. We're getting a good player to be a good fit on our team, and they have to do that. Again, two guards, 2 safeties, cornerback. You can go down the shopping, a linebacker. They got an extensive shopping list this offseason. And I didn't even mention cornerback, which is a given, right? Quarterback, which is a given.
Yeah, it is. You mentioned Tyreek, and I want you to answer me this question for me. There's a report it's a couple of weeks old now that the Dolphins are not planning on trading Tyreek. He has kind of walked back his comments of I'm out of here, or I'm out. Apologized. I said he wants to be in Miami. And yet I see stories and websites generally always including him in conversations about, high profile players who could be on the move. What gives?
Well, um, obviously people don't believe when they say either Tyreek wants to be here or the Dolphins want him to be here, right? I mean, but let's cut through all that. I mean, to me, I'd trade Tyreek if I could trade him. If I could get around the salary cap issues, which are tough to
Yes.
get around.
I was
Okay,
gonna
let's
say
just
that's kind of a significant
yeah,
factor.
they're tough to get around. But if you're talking to me, a post June 1st trade designation, um, you you're actually saving money if you can trade them. Now you're eating a lot of dead cap money, but it's almost impossible right now because you're right now. I think you pay him 28 million whether he plays or not for you or not. That's going to be the cost for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So 28.2. Um, but um, I don't know. This is a confusing one because look, Mike McDaniel made it. It was a big deal. Players late for meetings, but even more than that, I'm told behind the scenes it was worse. Just the behavior they had to put up with Tyreek, and so if Mike McDaniel wants to reset the values inside his program, and make a statement that who's in charge here, and we're going to do it the right way, a professional way. There it is. And beyond that, do they need 230, two receivers that cost this much when if you're not sure you can get them the ball as they didn't last year? So I would have no problem trading Tyreek Hill if I was the Dolphins. There you have to go to Brandon Shore and the salary cap guy and say, can we make this work? And that's going to take a lot of calculus on the work pad to make that work.
Yeah, and to me, the problem is again, if Mike McDaniel was in the first or second year and had 5 years left on his
Ah,
contract, it'd be a lot
no,
easier.
no,
No,
I don't.
you're shaking your head.
I'm
No.
not buying that. I'm not buying that. This is the time. It's almost you can get more from everybody else. Look, the Dolphins were tired of Tyree. Look what Teron Armstead said at the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Look,
Yep.
these guys get in line. Okay, if Teron Armstead's saying that publicly, imagine what it took inside that team that they were seeing. Okay, and so Brian Flores showed us just a couple years ago. It isn't always great talent that wins. It's good talent, sometimes not good in his case, but coming together, playing hard, and that's the case here. So what's going to happen this offseason, assuming they don't trade Tyreek? We're going to hear he's a leader again. He's happy to be here. He's working hard. He's on time to meetings, and you really won't know till November or December what's going on. And
Correct.
if when he doesn't get a catch or he gets two targets and one catch for 20 yards or something like that, we'll see how happy he is then. Okay. So, but again, I'd have no problem trading him if you could make it work.
Okay, and I have the salary cap ramifications. If you trade him after June 1st, and by the way, with trades, it's not something that can be done like in March and then you just designate it for later.
Right.
Unlike the cuts,
Right.
it would have to happen after June 1st. If it's done after June 1st, his cap number for the Dolphins in 2025 goes from 27.20, let's call it 28 to about 13. And so you save 15 million in cap space, but which doesn't help you get under the cap or make moves in free agency in March. Number one, and number two, to me, I'm not going to use that phrase that Perk uses all the time about what the Dolphin offense is. Two things. I'm not going to do that. But this is not the same team. That's not the same offense. They're not nearly as dangerous without Tyreek Hill. And I know it's coming. Well, what about Jalen Waddle in that big game against the Jets when they won 30-0 in 2023? That was one game. Okay. And if the Dolphins
what I would say to that is Jalen Waddle would have to be a more prominent part. And there were games when last year, I'm not sure where he had a big game but this would to me at this point would be addition by subtraction. And I know,
yeah,
look, Tyreek can go off on any game. I get that. but what they things they're putting up with behind the scenes, that doesn't add up to a winning football team. Okay. And so I'd say, and they're paying him everything. I mean, if he's not happy now, um, it's ridiculous. So I think I get the talent issue. I get it. But yeah, with that extra money, 15 million, get a professional receiver. Guy's going to show up practices. Guy's going to be a good teammate and is going to work hard. And I'm at the point where I think this is what they really need to do. I get your line about talent and all that stuff, but I think it's talent matters when you have great work habits too, and great commitment and loyalty to your trade. And Dolphins hadn't seen that in the past year from Tyreek.
Yeah, and your argument makes perfect sense as well. And there's something to be said for having a more detailed, disciplined team that's going to do attention to detail, all that good stuff. And then the question also then becomes to me is how realistic is the idea of the Dolphins being able to put together a team that could compete again in 2025 the way it did in 2023 before the dip of last season?
I mean, if you're a Dolphin fan, here's where you look at Washington. I get they got Jalen Daniels, okay, but and a new coach, a turnover. But there are teams that make some good decisions, fill some good holes, and find themselves in competition, right? And that's what they really need to do. The question really isn't can they compete. The question to me is can they, with the personnel gaffes they've made in recent years, okay, and the culture gaffes they've made in recent years. One the general manager, one the coach, and you can weigh the blame however you want, but the combination of those two haven't resulted in a winning team, a winning culture. And so, first of all, since we're on the offseason, can Chris Greer in the front office fill all these holes? We you knew there was a bill coming due when they were spending money like crazy a few years ago, and getting rid of draft picks to win now, and now that this is the bill's really coming. It started to come due last year. It's coming due now. And do they? The tough decisions to me are start with Armstead and Chubb. What do you do with them? Because you can buy yourself out of a lot of problems. At least have some money to some coins to rub in your pocket if you get rid of those. And let's be honest. Look at what Baltimore's supposedly doing. They're moving on from Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, even though they don't have a real answer at left tackle. I mean that's what organizations, they must have somebody that they're trusting, right? Because now we'll see if it's a negotiating ploy or what. You got to be a little careful this time of year to say what teams are doing and what they aren't. But this is something Baltimore has done in the past. They roll over, they get rid of expensive offensive linemen, and they go with younger guys. And look, if you're Chris Greer and you expended a second-round pick on Patrick Paul, I mean, you put him on scholarship for 1 year. Do you put him on scholarship for 2 years? I mean, that's saying you do not trust your draft pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Teron Armstead's a great player when he plays. We all know that. But you can't trust he's going to be there in December or January, which is the money times of the year, right? So that, and Chubb, his contract's at the very least going to get redone. It's almost $29 million, about $29 million. So, these are the tough decisions they got to make. But I'd start there. I'd say goodbye to those veterans and get in less expensive guys.
Yeah, the problem with that though is in terms of the money you're going to save on the cap, it's really insignificant unless you make it a post June 1 cut for both of
Sure,
those
you
guys.
you have two post June 1 designate. You can designate those two guys post
Correct.
June, and let's remember they could have saved an extra $6 million. I think maybe 5 million if they designated Kendall Fuller a post June 1st, and they
Correct.
did not do it, which tells you they want that option for two. They're going to use both of them. If they weren't going to use both of them, their plan wasn't we're going to use. They should have used one on Kendall Fuller and saved some. I think it's 5 or 6 million. I have to look it up, but so that tells me that something else is coming down the pike here.
Yeah. And we also have to understand if you make it a post June 1, it helps you this year, but then you have to pay the remainder of the dead space next year. There's another contract that they can touch, and that's Tua's contract, which right now has a cap number. He's guaranteed $50 million in 2025. His cap number currently is $39.2 million. Now they can restructure to bring down that cap number by about half. You can create an easy $19 million bucks. However you do that, you're tying yourself into him or to a large cap number for him for an additional year. Where do you sit
Yeah, in
on that?
other words, there's an exit ramp from his contract. So what's 2 years from now?
Correct.
And if you extend them, you take away that exit ramp. You extend the exit ramp another year, and so the question is, do they want to do that? I wouldn't want to do that because I would want, if I'm running the team to the best interests of the franchise, because of the injury situation with Tua, I'd want to keep that exit ramp.
Yeah, unless you're willing to do what Denver did with Russell Wilson, which is to eat a lot of cap space while he's no longer on your roster. Like for example, just for craps and giggles, as they say, if the Dolphins were to cut him like right now, just by the way, yeah, his contract on March 14th, his contract for next year of $56 million salary becomes fully guaranteed. If the Dolphins decided no, we're not going to do that, cut him before June 1st. The dead cap money for this year for Tua's contract would be $83.6 million. Yeah, so yeah, that's not going to happen. So yeah, but I'm looking at this, and then right now they could walk away after 2025 and eat $25.2 million of cap space if they wanted to move on next offseason. Which is
next offseason it is.
Yeah,
okay, I was thinking it was 2 years from now. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then look at Denver. Denver, what they did was pretty remarkable considering, what was it, 50 million? I think it was 50 million, the figure that Denver carried with Russell Wilson this year. But it was a heavyweight number, whatever it was. And the fact that they made that and made the playoffs without it, again, shows you what's good combination of building a team and running a team, coaching a team can do.
Yep. No, without question. Two quick final topics before we move on. By the way, since we didn't have a podcast on Tuesday, we should point out Andy Dalton, who to me looked like a really good candidate to become that veteran backup quarterback for Tua, no longer an option. He re-signed 2-year deal with the Carolina Panthers to remain Bryce Young's backup. The options, as I see them personally, would include Marcus Mariota, Joe Flacco, Carson Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo. I've heard Zach Wilson mentioned by some fans on social media. To me, that's a little dicey. I don't know that he's got the body of work of consistent play that I would want in my backup quarterback. Any of those give you a better feeling than the other?
Not really. I mean, all of them fit the checklist of things you're looking for. Now, Joe Flacco, is there even more left in the tank? Yeah, I mean, that's what you have to look. What's a fit for this offense? Because we saw this season it was kind of odd, but because Tyler Huntley didn't have a lot of work before he got thrown into it. But there are, the quick reads, getting rid of the ball quickly, etc. That's not everybody's game. And so is it Marcus? Marcus Mariota is the name being thrown out there, almost not because of his play, but because of his friendship with Tua. And this is what the Dolphins get the best player. The friendship will take care of it. If it's Mariota, that's great. But all those names you mentioned, you can. This is where Mike McDaniel's got to earn his money. This is what he does. And, he didn't do a very good job before when you look at the Mike White and the Skylar Thompson. And Chris Greer didn't do a very good job. And he explained afterwards, well, we went after a couple of people where we got outbid. This is not a situation to be outbid. It was an expensive lesson an unnecessary lesson for them to learn last offseason, but I'm sure they learned it.
One would hope. I mean, they went on the cheap because Dalton's contract with the Panthers now is like 2 years for $10 million, which is really not that egregious. Russell Wilson's $53 million cap hit. 20% of their cap, of the Broncos cap last year, went to Russell Wilson, and they still made the playoffs. That's impressive. I forgot to mention one name that's been mentioned is Jameis Winston. You want to talk about a Buster Boom player?
I love Jameis Winston. Bring Jameis Winston because he's a great guy to cover. Great personality.
Yes, he is.
I mean, that's what I would look at in my role. And he can throw you in or throw you out of a game real quick. So, but yeah, again, Jameis Winston is, if he would ever get his interceptions under control, which he's probably not going to. He has all the makings of a good quarterback in the NFL, but will he ever get that under control? Probably not.
This is where I'm going to quote Bill Parcells: "You are what your record says you are," and his career stats say what his career stats say. Dude throws a lot of picks, and even last year there are a couple of games you watch him with Cleveland, got off to a really good start with them, and then all of a sudden it's like spraying the ball all over the place, and when the Browns wound up with Dorian Thompson Robinson, that's a different story. Okay, two quick little nuggets before we get out of here. I know you wrote a column about this. Everybody's been covering it. I know it's 12 years after the fact, but it's in the news again because of the ESPN article profile on Jonathan Martin. You're on the side of instead of doing that, why don't you give us a summary of the column that appeared in the Sun-Sentinel.com?
Well, my column was, this just confirmed what everybody who was actually covering the team, talking to players, knew, that the NFL lied about this, that Jonathan Martin had lied about this, that the Dolphins went along with the lie at the start, because there's a line, I believe it was Paul Tagliabue had in running the NFL: all's well that ends. And that's what they wanted here. They wanted this whole bully thing to end. And how do you get it to end when you have a broken man and a very convoluted and complicated situation? You get the guy who just fits the parameters of a bully. And there are anecdotes about him. He's made mistakes. He's the ultimate meathead, and if you want to portray him as only that, in Richie Incognito, and they did, and the Wells report did, the NFL went, the Dolphins went along with it, and everybody moved along and didn't worry about what was really the truth here, because the truth was a lot more complicated about a locker room culture and one man at the emotional end of the spectrum this way and the other at the emotional the other way, both of them with as proven out, and it sounds like they both are moving on well, but both have mental health issues, and it was a very complicated situation for them just to conclude, well, this guy was a bully and this was the guy who got bullied, and yet that was, now we can move on. And so it was all a lie, though.
Very interestingly put. No, and you mentioned that, and then Ted Wells is the guy who did the investigation. He was also Deflategate dude, which certainly a lot of people can have different opinions about the conclusions of that as well. You were about to interject. Go ahead.
Yeah, one other thing about this, the thing that really ticks me off even to this day is Incognito's career. He was suspended 8 games, basically lost a year of his career, and that became his reputation. Even though he went on to 3 more Pro Bowls, that was his reputation. But Jim Turner, the offensive line coach, lost his job and really was blackmarked. He came back with the Bengals, I don't know how many years later. And then Kevin O'Neill, who's a top-notch trainer, great guy. He was voted trainer of the year that year by his peers as he lost his job. And you go down the line, and Joe Philbin, I was no fan of the way he ran the team, but he was constantly asked about he didn't, he lost the locker room. He never really had the locker room, but the point was this wasn't just a coach talking to players issue. It was a lot more complicated, and for the league to allow that to happen, the Dolphins to allow the league come in and take over the investigation of that and come up with this conclusion, I thought all that was wrong because guys' lives were really damaged by this.
Yeah, another ironic part of the story is that in 2012, Richie Incognito was the co-winner of the South Florida Dolphin PFWA chapter of the Good Guy Award. It was Richie and Reggie Bush who split that award.
Well, how could you not like? Let's be honest. How could you not like if you talk to Richie?
Yeah.
He was. Look. He had issues and problems, and how he handled himself. I'm not defending that, but talking to him, he was a personality and a fun personality to talk with.
He was. Okay, since I teased it at the beginning, and we're going to wrap up with this. This is the meme I saw with the best players, the best player for each franchise. So, do you think Dan Marino should be a slam dunk, no questions asked, let's move on, not even a discussion? Or is anybody else should be mentioned? Or if not, who would be second in your mind?
Well, yeah, I think Dan Marino's the right choice, and now slam dunk. Zonka was the face and the game of the '72 Dolphins, and really that dynastic run. So he would have to be mentioned. If you're talking greatest at his position, everybody talks about Dwight Stevenson, even though his was a shortened career. So it's sort of what are you asking when you ask the question? Are you asking the best career, the best, most impactful career, the best player at his position? But I think Marino has to be the answer. But slam dunk, it depends on how you define it.
Very, very good answer. In fact, let me see if I can produce the heart here. There we go.
Give me the heart. Yeah.
That was a brilliant answer, actually, because I'm the same way. Is it who accomplished the most for the franchise? Best player at his position? Because to me, if we go best player, regardless of position, Dwight Stevenson that dude was good.
It's funny. I just wrote a column on Richmond Webb and the Hall of Fame, and talking to I talked to several people, and Mike Westhoff, I forgot, he basically took over as helped John Sandusky when John had health issues as offensive line coach, and somehow we were talking. He goes, "Boy, Dwight Stevenson." It took a curve into a Dwight Stevenson conversation and how good he was, and these career coaches never seen a talent like that, and so to your point that if you're talking best at his position, it'd probably be Dwight Stevenson in that line.
Yeah, no, the dude was like absolutely incredible. And there's a reason Dan Marino was sacked so few times through that stretch in the 80s. Yes, the quick release really helped. But Dwight Stevenson was a dude in the middle of that offensive line. And also the part that was funny too is could not have been more humble, more low key. It's almost like you tell him like how great he was. It's like, no, shucks, so me. No. I'm just trying to. It was a good dude, and man, was that dude good. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up. But speaking of former Dolphins and former greatness, those watching on YouTube, you can look behind Dave's mug. Hopefully you can. This is the cover of Still Perfect, a book on the 19th. There we go, on the 1972 Dolphins that Dave wrote and that I copy edited, and it's still available on Amazon. It's really, really good. I encourage you to check it out. And I also encourage you to like and subscribe. Please check out the website, MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com. Read Dave's stuff at SunSentinel.com. You see his Twitter handle at Dave Hyde Sports. Mine is at Poupar NFL. Until we meet again, thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.